Today at Fresh Aire Network Podcast Studio, we are happy to welcome back Lisa Gavin with CBI Solutions. Today we're going to talk about the topic of credit scoring in your cheat sheet.
Yes.
All right. And we want to actually share this because we know that it's a lot of things that's going on when it comes to your credit, and it's a lot of tools and strategy that comes with it, and we want to make sure that we at least give the listeners some understanding about what that strategy is and why CBI Solutions has come up with a cheat sheet. So Lisa,
Sure.
Can you share?
Thanks for having me, Gavin. So we're calling this a cheat sheet because we want you to be able to, in listening and watching this, to have a different understanding about what's happening with credit scoring and what credit scoring means and how credit scores are developed than the average person out there. So this will be, believe me, a good cheat sheet, because just in going through this podcast, you will know a lot more than your average person does about credit scoring. So the confusion with credit scoring is that credit scoring can come from a lot of different sources. And unfortunately, the average person has no idea when they're quoting a credit score what credit score that is. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today, is understanding, even from the beginning, why a credit score is important, which I think we'll start there first today. And then what type of credit score is it, and why is that important to even know what credit score you're looking at? So in general, the way credit scoring works is that there's all these different dynamics that calculate together to give you a 3-digit credit score. Back in the old days, I'll just call it, the way things used to be is that credit was just simply based on whether you paid your bills on time. Right. And so you had old credit reports that would just have a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 9, which is a charge off. Basically, a 1 meant you paid your bills on time. 2 is 30 days late, 60 days late, etc., to a point of what they call a charge off, which means they just gave up collecting their money from you. Okay. So that was the way scoring was looked at. Basically, it was, are you paying your bills on time, and do you have quote unquote A1 credit? Well, in this modern age, things are different. So when somebody says to me, hey, I have A1 credit, I go, man, that's a damn good steak sauce. That's about all that A1 means to me, because very simply, you could pay every bill on time and still not have great credit scores. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because the new system is based on lots of different factors that is calculated into a 3-digit score that then you are assigned. And once you have that 3-digit score, that tells lenders how much they can trust you, or conversely, how little they can trust you and how much of a risk you are. And so the goal, of course, is to get that 3-digit score as high as you can to be able to be approved for credit.
Quick question. Who are the players that disseminate the credit scores out? Can you explain that to them?
Sure. Now, here's where this is going to get a little confusing. So you guys stay with me on this, okay? You have 3 different credit bureaus: TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. Each of those 3 bureaus will sell you or issue you a credit score, because they just simply have all this data and they assign a score to it. And so if you don't know better, you would assume that because you got a score, for instance, let's say from TransUnion, that TransUnion score is the same score that you're going to see when you go to the bank and apply for credit. Hate to tell you, it's not. So you have the 3 bureaus. We're going to talk about why that is in a minute. Mm-hmm. So let me just set the stage first. So you have the 3 different credit bureaus that all have their own scoring systems, right? Then you had this kind of, let's call them Johnny come lately, called FICO, FICO. So FICO was a company that came along later, much after the bureaus were already in existence, and said, hey, we have a scoring system that we can apply to TransUnion, or we can apply it to Equifax, or we can apply it to Experian. But the bottom line is it's one scoring system that we can apply to any of these three bureaus, to any of the data that these companies have. And we can give you one consistent scoring system that we can apply to all three of those bureaus. Now, why is that important? Well, at some point, if you were, let's just say, applying for a mortgage, and mortgage companies are always going to pull all three bureaus. They're always going to look at all three to decide if they want to give you a mortgage. Well, how do you compare what bureau is best? How do you compare your scores if each of the three bureaus are all selling you different scoring models? It's like comparing apples and oranges. And so that system was so confusing to most folks. So when FICO came along and said, hey, we got one scoring model and we'll apply it to any of the three bureaus that you want, but at least it's one scoring model. Now you can compare if your TransUnion is stronger, if your Equifax is stronger, because through using one scoring system, you can make comparisons. But if you had three different scoring systems, you cannot make comparisons. So you have these three different players in the bureau, the fourth player in FICO that's just simply using the bureau's data to assign their scoring model to it. And so when I say to you that it's important to know which score you're getting, just that right there should tell you, wait a minute, Trans has its own score, Equifax has its own score, Experian has its own score, then FICO has a different score. Well, that's confusing enough, but then when you add to it that there are literally hundreds of monitoring services out there that sell you, oh, we give you access to your three bureaus and we'll give you a score. A score. What score? So most of the time when you get these monitoring services, you don't even know what score they're giving you. And that's theoretically a different score. So literally all these different sources to get credit reports and scores, and you don't even know which one you're getting.
Well, it is. It's amazing how people have got. I'm just amazed how if I didn't know you guys, where would I be? And I'm saying that because some of these things that we're talking about may be daunting to some people when they hear it, because it's a situation where you know it's a system and a strategy behind it, but you don't know the strategy. And you don't even have anybody else that knows the strategy that you can bounce the ideas off of prior to you doing something. Now, it's a different feeling when a person can do something about their credit before something negative has not happened. It's harder for them to do it once they had something negative happen, and now they're coming and trying to rectify, and they usually come to you in that light. So I think that the strategy of knowing who the players are is very important.
Yeah, because the other thing, the reason that's so important is because if you don't even know what you're looking at, what you're judging yourself by, better yet, what is the bank judging you by? And so a lot of people who get their scores from all these different sources and think that they're real will go to the bank after they went to some monitoring service, and the monitoring service said that they were a 670, which should have been enough for the loan that they were trying to get, right? And they walk into the bank goes, no, you're 632. And they go, how is that? I pulled my report. I got my score. And the bank is simply going to tell you, well, that's not the scoring system that we use.
And there's nothing you can do.
Except for walk out declined.
Well,
and then figure out from there, how do you build your credit score? So later in this podcast, we will talk about the actual components of credit scoring, so you have a better idea of what types of things you need to be doing to, build and develop it. But again, if you don't even know that you're looking at even the scoring standard that the bank is looking at, you're already behind the 8 ball.
No, it's true. What can we go into the percentage, perhaps?
Sure. Well, before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about FICO, because I think it's important for people to understand why FICO is so prominent and why that's the score that you need to know. And then we'll talk about, as Gavin was saying, the breakout of FICO scores, so you understand what makes up that FICO score. So long story short, as I told you, I called FICO a Johnny come lately. Once FICO positioned itself as, hey, we're the only ones that have a scoring model that can be applied to all three bureaus, what ended up happening is in the mortgage industry, the government basically was the first ones that said, hey, that's what we want. When we pull this mortgage report, we want all three of these bureaus measured the same way. So we're going to start using these FICO scores. And so if you think about the fact that millions of people apply for and get approved for, mortgages, there's over 300 million people here in the United States, and a good percentage of them are going to apply for a mortgage at some point. Mm-hmm. Well, imagine telling all of those people that if you want a government-backed loan, which a lot of banks offer government-backed products, you have to provide a FICO score. So now the mortgage company is pulling FICO scores for all of those people. So that's literally millions upon millions and millions of people that are getting FICO scores pulled when they go for a mortgage. Well, what ended up happening is that, just by sheer volume of all these FICO scores being pulled, all of a sudden FICO became very rich and very popular. And so FICO then said, why stop there? Let's conquer the world. Hey, Mr. Banker, we also have a product that pulls scores for people you're trying to assess for credit cards. So if you want to see if they're a good risk to give them a credit card, use our scoring model. Hey, Mr. Auto Dealer, if you want to approve this person for a car, we have a FICO model just for the auto lending industry. And we'll give you a special score to tell you if this person is a good risk or a bad risk for a car. So imagine they're going to all these different businesses saying, hey, we have exactly what you need. And because FICO scores are already so prominent in the mortgage industry, the banks start just going along with it for everything else. So 9 times out of 10, if you go into a bank to apply for anything, they're going to be pulling a FICO score.
And FICO stands for?
Fair Isaac Corporation. So it is a private company that's very rich, providing credit scoring models for the industry. Now, with that being said, FICO has become very, very popular within the industry. So, anybody in a mortgage company, loan officer, bank, anybody in lending knows about FICO scores, at least that FICO scores are important. But what even they don't understand is how prominent all these other stupid scoring models are out there. That
explain, yeah. right. Because that sounded like some people been gotten.
Oh, people are getting gotten every day.
All right.
So if you've ever seen the commercials on TV where it's 3 guys, 2 of them are standing there like they're strong and they got 750 written on their forehead,
I remember that.
and then you got the one with the 525 scratching himself, looking crazy, right? Because the demonstration is that the better credit scores, the higher credit scores are stronger and better, which they are. But what people didn't know is that they wasn't even selling them real scores. That particular service was not selling them a FICO score. It was just selling them the scoring model for that service. And so people would see that and think, oh, I'm going to see my score. The bottom line is these companies are going to sell you a score because that's what you want, a score. Not the score, not the score that the bank's looking at. They're just selling you a score because that's all they're entitled to do. And so the bottom line is it's all marketing. It's just to get you to feel more comfortable paying for that service because they're giving you a score. So where we are with lenders in this country in general as consumers is that we're just kind of being sold a bill of goods. We're being sold scores because at least now we understand that it's not A1 anymore. We do understand that A1 is steak sauce.
Right.
Most people.
Right.
Okay. We do understand that we have a score that's a 3-digit number. We understand that now. So people are just at a better point. But we still don't understand what score. We don't know what questions to ask. We don't know to say, well, what score do I need to be looking at? How do I know that the score that I bought is the score or is not the score that I need to be looking at? See, a lot of us don't even know we need to ask that question because we're just used to what we're being sold through marketing.
No, that's an interesting thought. And I know we've talked about this before, but yeah, if you know, for instance, you're going to get a certain loan and you know that the loan people may pull a certain credit bureau, then you can, that is mind-boggling to me that if you know that simple information, it's the difference between you walking in there and you knowing the same number that they know, because that's what it basically means, right?
Isn't it nice to walk in and know you're going to basically be told yes?
Yeah.
I would prefer that. Now,
Yeah.
I would have to say this because I have to always be very clear. You're never going to 100% know, just simply because the business has other criteria that they're using to assess you. For instance, you might apply for the loan and know you have the credit score, but you've only been living in your current residence for 1 year. You've only been at your job 1 year. Well, that particular lender may not like that. They may feel like you're still, even though you have the score, that you still aren't as trustworthy as they need you to be or as stable as they need to be. So lenders have the ability to still make certain decisions based on all criteria that they want to look at. But bare minimum, you want to make sure that you have the first criteria met, because there is no circumstance in which you're just not going to have sufficient credit scores, but everything else look good and they say, okay. No, most banks are very stringent that they have a minimum requirement, period. And even though everything else looks good, if you don't meet that minimum requirement, they're just going to be extremely likely to say no. So you have to meet that first criteria of the credit score.
Or talk to CBI Solutions beforehand. And I think that's one of the main things why we're doing this, and why it's important that we talk about this subject matter, is that we need consultation for this process. We need to have a second person or expert to know what it is and how to approach this.
Right.
And I believe CBI Solutions is that entity. Not to mention, you don't want to go at it alone. Also, this thing is forever changing.
It is.
It's ever evolving.
Well, that's why, and I think we spoke about this before, and you said to me, Lisa, people need a coach. People need a coach. And I said, you know what? You are so right, because think about it. Venus and Serena, they're the best tennis players in the world. They still have a tennis coach. So a lot of times people can get misled thinking that either they are so good at something or they're supposed to be so good at something that they don't need further coaching. That is the furthest from the truth. Some of the top experts in any industry have a coach or a mentor. And so how we look at ourselves as a company, CBI is your credit consultant. We are the person that helps you to interpret all the different things that's going on around you, whether that be what's on your credit report and how to interpret all that stuff, whether it's, trying to figure out my credit score and understanding how to increase it, whether it's understanding where I need to be from a credit scoring standpoint to accomplish particular goals, because that varies based on what you're trying to do, whether it be what order do I need to do things in to get from where I am now to where I'm going.
That's important.
And it's not a straight line. I know everybody wants it to be a straight line, but I can tell you, at the 15,000 clients, it is not a straight line to get to from where you are to where you're going. There's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be things that stop you. You got to detour left. You got to make one step before you can make another. And a lot of times people make missteps because somebody's not there to say, hey, no, you can't do that yet. You have to do this before that can happen. But if you don't know, then you're making all these missteps that eventually you're going to have to come back and do things again. But the goal is to have as much, coaching and knowledge base that is being applied to your situation, so you're not going at this by yourself. Because even a credit report, just reading a credit report, it's not always easy. So don't get mad if you don't know how to do it. Believe me, you and millions of other people do not. So one piece I want to add to that is that it's different when you have time to do something. It's different when you do not have time to do something. In this case, when you want to get from point A to point B with your credit, and you turn around and attempt to do it the first time, and you find out that you're not, now you have this timetable in the back of your mind of, I wanted to do this now, but I'm not to. How am I going to do it? So that added stress level, I believe, comes with with it, and which basically means that you need a consultant back to the
coaching piece.
Well, how about the stress level of life? I mean, most people, if a person comes to me and says, Lisa, I'll just work on my credit myself. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's fine. You can, right? But the truth of the matter is the reason that people oftentimes are not successful doing it on their own, one, they're missing a lot of the information that I already have, things I already know. And I tell folks all the time, you know, hey, you can go and do all the research and learn all the stuff I learned from dealing with 15,000 people. or you could hire my knowledge base and I can apply all that I know to you. Or you can go and try to independently research all that.
That's very important.
It's fine. I mean, whatever floats your boat, you know, I'm okay with that. But chances are you're not going to apply the type of time, energy to it because you're busy trying to deal with your job, your kids, your family, your this, your that. It's so many other things that's pulling at your time that the consistent push that you have to do to get your credit from where it is now to where it's going, a lot of people just don't apply that type of time and energy to it. So, you know, it's nothing wrong with getting help to get to where you need to go. And it's nothing wrong with getting somebody that can help you understand how to navigate your credit report and your credit scores. Because, Gavin, as you were saying to me before, that, man, if you think you were just saying a minute ago, if you know, for instance, you walk into the bank, what bureau they're pulling and what scores they need, you're way ahead because there'll probably be a situation for you that, let's just say one of your bureaus is a rock star. One of you, between Trans, Equifax, Experian, one of them is really good, but the other ones may not be. That doesn't need to stop you if you can apply the type of strategy that we do to a credit report, meaning that we will particularly target companies that we know are only going to look at your strong bureau. But that's stuff that we research and make sure that we know how to do to help our clients. But if you don't know that, you wouldn't necessarily know to apply that tactic or strategy to the situation.
So do you want to get into what is the breakdown of what the credit score actually is? Because that it's one thing to know that it's a score. It's another thing to know what the score is all about. Right.
So I think by now, I'm hoping everybody has gotten this, it's very important for you to know your FICO score, FICO, Fair Isaac Corporation. Because until such time that the industry changes, which is not to say it can't change tomorrow, but until such time that the industry changes and say, hey, we're using this other scoring model, FICO is it right now. So that's what we need to know. FICO has a website, myfico.com, and you know, FICO is where you need to go to purchase your scores. And the cool thing is that there are companies that's starting to help people a little bit more so they can have a marketing edge than anything, but they are helping people a lot more. For example, Discover gives you a free FICO score when you have a Discover card once a month, which I think is a pretty neat service. Mm-hmm. I think it's just based off of, I'm not sure if it's TransUnion or Equifax, but they only provide one bureau, one FICO score for that one bureau. But that's a free gauge of your real score. So you have other companies, Discover, Merrick Bank. There's a couple of them out there that give you a free FICO score once a month. So, you know, you may want to gravitate towards credit card companies that are giving you free and relevant information. Okay.
And you was also talking about the distinguishing the difference between a score versus the report.
Yeah. You know what? Let's do this. Mm-hmm. Let's finish talking about what's in a FICO score. Cool. And then we'll go back and, you know, remind me to come back to that point because that's very important as well. So FICO, as important as it is, it's very difficult for people to understand how to manipulate that FICO score. Okay. Because scores are only a reflection of the things that's reported on your credit report. And so a lot of times you have to improve what's on your credit report to see better scores. So that's why credit repair is relevant. It's very important. Everybody who does credit repair don't know what they're doing, but that's a whole nother show we'll talk about. But the bottom line is repairing or trying to remove derogatory information is a good thing, okay? Because If there's less bad data on your report, your scores are going to be better. Okay. But the other part of that is that if all you're concerned about is whether things are reporting good and on time on your credit report, you're missing the boat, because your reporting or your payment history, let's say your payment history, that's whether you pay your bills on time or not, right? That is, again, what used to be that A1 credit. 100% of your credit score is, hey, do you pay your bills on time? That's it.
The old way.
The old way.
The old way.
Okay. New way credit scoring, and particularly FICO credit scoring, says your payment history is only 35% of your score. So needless to say, I'm sure that confused a lot of old school folks, because all I had to do was pay my bills on time and somebody was going to give me some money. Not in the world of FICO. So it's 35% of your score is your payment history, whether you pay your bills on time or not. So the question is then, Lisa, what's the other 65%?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So 65% of your credit is being judged by what, to be honest with you, a lot of people don't even know they're being judged by.
True.
Okay. So after the 30%, the next largest chunk in the pie is 30%. And that 30% amounts to your amount of debt. So 30% of your credit score is based on your amount of debt. So in essence, what they're trying to figure out is, what is your debt load like? You know, does it look like you carrying too many debts? You got to pay too many companies. Let's just say, in a real world example, you have a friend and it's a group of you guys, and this one particular person is very savvy at borrowing money from everybody. And you the last one they haven't hit up, but you know for a fact they haven't paid anybody back. Are you going to be the next victim? Likely you're not. You're going to be like, pay some of these other folks back, then I'll give you a loan. But you can't owe all these people. Now you want to owe me too, because you know your chances of getting paid back is slim if they still owe 5 other people.
And once again, if you don't know who that person is in your family or friends, that might be you. So
Gavin said that I didn't. I knew he was going to say it. I didn't say that.
I mean, it is. I mean,
You might be that person, huh?
Because it's based off your habits.
Yes.
And your history.
And so that's what they're looking at. So if you have a habit of owing a whole bunch of other people and you just got too much debt out there, the next company is probably not going to want to lend to you. So it makes logical sense when you think about it, that the amount of debt that you have out there would be a part of the decision making, and thus a part of the credit score. Okay. Also, part of that 30% is something that you guys should be familiar with, which is credit card usage or utilization. So that's an important principle that just says you do not want to overutilize what a company gives you. So let's just say you get a $1,000 credit card with a $1,000 credit limit. Although a lot of people would say, hey, they gave me $1,000, I'm using $1,000. That is not how that's supposed to go. No. So
that's supposed to go.
But that's why, the beginning thing that you asked was, why is it important to know about this credit scoring stuff? Because guess what? If you don't know that you're being judged harshly and that your credit score is being decreased because you're maxing out everything, then, obviously you're not going to do anything different if you don't know. So by you knowing now that you really want to try to stay under 40%, some people will say 30. There's different theories about what is the best percentage to be at. But the bottom line is, I tell my clients, don't go over 40%, because at that point your scores are already going down instead of going up because you're using too much. So translation, if you have $1,000 credit limit on your card, don't charge over $400. I know that does not seem reasonable, because you feel like they gave me $1,000, I should use $1,000. It's not designed actually that way. And it's designed to penalize you because you're overusing. So you do want to keep that in consideration. So that's the importance of understanding what is driving that score so that you can do things different or do them better. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we had a 35% length of history, 35% payment history,
right?
30% amount of debt.
Exactly.
15% is length of history. So what does that mean? Companies want to see that if they are going to issue you credit, that you have the capacity for longevity. Are you the type of person that gets an account, you run into every sale and get the credit card so you can get the 10-15% off and then use it and then close the card? Do you keep your relationships? Now, certain types of accounts are going to automatically come with longer relationships, like a mortgage. So people who have mortgages tend to have higher credit scores because a mortgage is a long-term relationship. And so lenders want to know you have the capacity for long-term relationships. I tell the example I give all the time, just me being silly, is that if you're a woman and you're about to date a guy, you might want to know how long the other girlfriends lasted, because that's valid history. Has every other girl only lasted a few months? That might give you a clue.
Yeah, that's definitely a
what you can expect.
A woman's point of view.
Well, yeah. I mean, but it goes either way. Woman, male, female, doesn't matter. That person's history makes a difference in terms of what you can expect. And so at some point, somebody's going to be the one that lasts when other people didn't. Mm-hmm. But there is still a certain risk involved, right, with being the one that's jumping in, hoping that you're the one that lasts all of this time. And so lenders may not be the one to jump in and say, I trust him that he's going to stay around for a while. They may not want to be that one. They might be a lender that says, you know what, I want people who are stable and trusted and who have had long-term relationships. So what that means for you and your credit is that you want to gravitate towards things that show a long-term relationship. So if you get a credit card, hopefully you're working to get good credit cards with good companies that will treat you well so that you can maintain that relationship. A credit card, I had a client today that had credit cards from 1997. And her scores were, even though she had a couple of bad things on her report, her scores were pretty darn good because she's maintained credit card relationships since 97.
And that's with the length of history.
Yes. And so she's killing it on length of history because her scores, they're going to feel really good about lending to somebody that has maintained that kind of relationship for that period of time. So length of history is a very important principle and accounts for 15% of your credit score. Okay.
So I know this is back to the length of history. When people, and I know I've done this when I came and spoke to you, if I had a credit card that I thought was bad and then I wanted to close it, mm-hmm. but you just made the point of it was open since 97. Don't
close it.
That was my point. So,
yes.
So that was just an example, listeners, of you thinking that with my limited knowledge that this is bad, let me get rid of it, when getting rid of it hurts you more than keeping it.
Yeah, and it hurts you for two reasons. One, because you're closing off a relationship. Okay, and as I just told you, that's 15% of your score. You want to maintain as many long relationships as you can. The other reason is just very simply somebody that has something looks much more appealing than someone who does not. Okay, women, you guys understand. You understand this. Okay, two equally cute guys. One has more money in his pocket. I think he might edge out. Okay, well,
sad but true.
Sad but true. But let's look at it from your credit report standpoint. If nobody has given you anything, then why should I give you something? People only want somebody that's desirable to someone else. So,
right. We talking. This is universal knowledge.
Yes, it is. But the thing is, we don't apply this to stuff like credit. This stuff applies to our credit. So a lender, if you're looking for them to give you money, they much rather see you have $1,000 credit card that you're not using at all. Because guess what? You don't look desperate. You got $1,000 and you're not even using that.
They may give you more.
So they're going to give you more. They're like, oh, okay, well, you're doing pretty good. But if you have $1,000 and you're using every drop of that $1,000, you look desperate. So by the time you get ready to go to that lender and you've maxed out what you have, you look desperate. Nobody's going to give you anything and you look desperate. They much rather roll with a winner. Okay. So the other reason that closing that account out could damage your scores is because when you lose available credit, note the word available. If you've maxed it out, it's not available, right? When your credit is available, I have money sitting there that I'm not using, the more you have available, the better you look and the higher your credit scores are going to be. So that's why you don't want to close out that credit. You want to just leave, even if you leave it at 0, it's better that and showing that you have something available than closing it out and not having anything available and potentially crashing your credit scores.
So the next thing
is 10%. Right. So got 30, 35, 30, 15, 10. 10% is new credit. Okay. So 10% of your score looks at whether you are the type of person that's applying for credit all the time, which is not good. Every time you apply for credit, it's going to put an inquiry on your credit report. And those inquiries, eventually, when you accumulate too many of them, will reduce your credit score. Excuse me. In the workshop that I did today, somebody said, why is that? That just makes no sense to me. That's all. It makes sense. Put yourself in the shoes of the lenders. So if you're applying for credit, you're applying and applying and applying, and you go to 5 different places. If they weren't tracking that you went to 5 different places, theoretically, you can get approved for all 5 of those accounts, right? And take the money and leave the country. You could just decide to grab as much as you can and bail. They don't want people because, it's some folks out here that do some interesting things. There are folks out here that go and use up every drop of everything and then, file for bankruptcy. Of course, they got everything they needed before they did. And by all means, I'm not trying to give you any ideas.
Right.
So don't pin that one on me. But what I'm saying is that lenders need to track what you're doing so that they reduce risk. And so just letting you apply for as many people as you want to apply for and not tracking that is risky because you might be trying to do the wrong things with it. So what they do is reduce your scores. When you've applied for too many people, they reduce your scores so the next company knows not to give you anything. Until such time that that's cooled off, and you backed off of it and they can see if you got approved for what, because those accounts will show up on your credit report. And then once they see where you are, eventually those inquiries will get old and they'll open the doors up again for you to apply and your scores start going up again. But the reduction in the score is a way to control you and potentially stop you from overdoing it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And also, I think too, if you file for 5 different lines of credit, they automatically think that you didn't get the rest of them to a certain extent, right? If you get an inquiry on your credit and the inquiry is not connected to an account that you have on your credit, does that make a difference or no?
It does make a difference because obviously at that point that you've applied for, they don't know what you've gotten. Okay. But the trick is that the higher your credit scores, the more that they expect you to shop for the best rate. So the interpretation may be that you're just simply shopping for the company that's going to give you the best rate. So the real world example that I would give for that last 10%, let's just say, for instance, you have, I think we were talking about credit mix, correct?
The last 10%.
You're right. So the real world example that I can give for that is, let's just say, going to college, for instance. When you're in college, you have to take math, science, history, all the different disciplines to say that you at least have a general base of knowledge about all these different areas, even though that's not your major and, that's not the main course of study, but at least having that base of experience.
Electives, as they sometimes
electives, or even your core courses. They have different areas of information that they want you to say that you have a basic knowledge of. Well, credit's the same way. They want to say that you have a basic knowledge of managing these different types of accounts and different types of credit, whether it's student loans, mortgages, car notes, different things. And the more experience you have, the more experience they feel you are, the higher your credit scores, because theoretically, if you've managed all those different types of things, then that means you've got a good base of experience, right? And so like college, you want to have a good base of experience too. So that's the best example that I can give you of why that's important. But what that means for you when you look at your credit is, are you experienced or overly experienced in just one area, for instance? So let's just say, well, all I do is cars. I finance cars, but I don't do credit cards. Hear that from a lot of guys, right? Well, you're going to be losing points when it comes to credit mix because they don't see that you know how to manage a credit card or other types of credit. So you want to be able to show your ability to manage different things in order to master the scoring system.
And that's generally timetable, more so timetable based. And that means that a mortgage, which sometimes is 30 years, is perhaps different from a car note that was only 5.
Well,
you need both of them.
You need both of them. I mean, because those different types of things have different expectations, are going to be handled differently, and that's what they're looking for. That you can handle different types of things.
Makes sense.
So that's your 100%. And so hopefully understanding that now, you understand why it's so much more important to know what else do I need to do other than pay my bills on time. And for people who are accustomed to just that narrow viewpoint, it becomes very difficult to understand what else to do. And so that's where, we try to come on board, is to help you understand how to diversify your credit portfolio. And we don't think about credit that way, that we have a credit portfolio. And we have to manage that portfolio. We have to manage our accounts. We have to manage the relationships we have and that we don't have yet, because we may need to develop some new relationships to diversify what our credit profile looks like. And so those are things that we help people do.
Now, I asked you before about business credit. Mm-hmm. That's a scoring scenario too, right?
It is. Business credit does have a credit score. So just like you personally have a credit score, so does your business. The problem is that business credit scoring is very different from personal.
But it still has a score.
It still has a score, but it's a different scoring model, and depends upon where you get your scores from as to what that score is, whether it's a Paydex score, which is through Dun & Bradstreet, or right now business credit is going through quite a transformation. So there's a lot more sources to get your business credit report and a business score. So we're not going to get deep into that now. But what is important for you to understand is that as you establish your business and establish business credit, you will have a business credit score. But it's also just as or more important to have strong personal credit, because a lot of the business credit that you go for, they will still want to look at you as the personal guarantor. So if it's your business, they want to see that you are a strong person backing your business, and you don't have as many options anymore. Well, they will just give credit to the business without looking at a person that is associated with the business. So whether that's you or a business partner, one of you 9 times out of 10 are going to need to have a strong credit profile, so they can look at you as well and say, hey, okay, the business looks good, but we also have a strong person backing this in case this loan goes bad. So it does put you on the hook. And
CBI Solution does have information about that.
Oh, absolutely. We help people. We don't specialize in business credit as much as we specialize in personal credit. However, most of our individual clients, if they start a business or do business, will transition from working on personal credit to business credit.
There we go.
Yeah.
That was the most important thing, is that I want the listeners to know that you do have a working knowledge of personal and business.
Absolutely.
Yep. Great. Wow. So I know that we have talked about the 100% of what the credit score is, as you know.
And particularly the FICO score.
Yeah. We talked about, these are the credit scoring cheat sheet approach that CBI Solutions and what we wanted to talk about today. Is there anything else that you want to share with them as far as the report versus the score?
Yeah. I think one thing that we were talking about that we both realized that there's a lot of confusion out there is understanding the difference between what's on the credit report and then understanding credit scoring. The 3 bureaus are going to give you a report, and those 3 bureaus are typically not going to have the exact same information on those reports. That's because some companies report to some bureaus most companies, especially big ones, will report to all three, but smaller companies or some collection companies don't report across the board. And so what that means is that when you look at your TransUnion versus your Equifax versus Experian, that they may have different data and different information on those reports. So what that means is that you're going to have a different score for each of those bureaus, because the score is only a reflection of the data that they're pulling from your credit report.
Right.
Data such as how you've been paying your bills, data such as how long you've had accounts open and active, things like that. All the different percentages of things we've talked about is going to amount to what score gets assigned to you.
And let me just mention this. The reason why I brought that up is because you've made mention before that they market that you get your free credit report, which is different from your score.
Yes. Well, what happened is that, over time, the government has tried to do a better job monitoring these independent and private companies who make a lot of money off of our information. And so one of those attempts to manage that is to say, hey, bureaus, you guys got to give people a free credit report every year. Okay, people should have access to what's on their credit report, because the bottom line is that's how you're being judged. So you go to annual credit report, annualcreditreport.com is where you can qualify to get your free report. It's a consolidated site for all three bureaus, so you can request each of those reports from each bureau. Now, the trick is that when you go there, they're going to give you the free report, but then TransUnion is going to probably say to you, hey, by the way, did you want your score? You're like, sure, you can if you pay for it. So they're not obligated to give you a free score every year. They're only obligated to give you a free report. Now, the important distinction here is that I think at the beginning, if I didn't say it, let me say it again. Every different bureau has its own score that they're looking to sell you, because they're like, forget FICO. We don't want to let FICO make all the money here. Buy our scores. And what ended up happening is that consumers start getting confused because, the bureaus are selling you their scores. But particularly just in the last year, TransUnion and Equifax got a slap on the wrist to the tune of some billions of dollars that they had to pay for misleading consumers, because they were selling their scores and not letting consumers know that those scores were not the same scores that the banks are looking at. So people were confused buying those scores. So to me, now, TransUnion would probably be pissed at me for saying this. To me, it makes no sense for me to pay for TransUnion score, because if I pay for TransUnion score, it's not the same score the bank is going to be looking at. So just give me the report, Mr. TransUnion. Thank you. I'll get my scores elsewhere. Okay. And so that elsewhere is directly to FICO. And either you're going to have something that gives you a free FICO, like Discover Card or, Merit Bank. Like I said, there's a few of them that give you free FICOs, or you're going to pay for, note the word pay for, FICOs, because FICO definitely is not free. They're trying to get their money. Okay. But usually if somebody's giving you free scores, most of the time they're not real scores. I mean, so I've been very proud of the credit card companies that's stepping up and giving you free scores. But if you think about it, they're not free, because the interest that you're paying them to use those cards, believe me, those cards aren't free. Right. But at least they're giving you something extra for, what you're paying.
Well, we talked about a lot of information, but I do know some of the takeaway that you always talk about when it comes to credit is having the proactive approach.
Yes.
And the proactive approach is indulging and being a participant in the process of you learning and educating yourself. So first of all, once you learn it, then you'll be able to not be a victim of it.
Yes, you navigate different when you have information.
And then the other side that I always bring up is that you learn it enough or to extent so you can teach it to your children.
Yeah.
And that's very important to me. And it's because my mom, she had the A+ credit.
That was my mom.
Yep.
Pay your bills on time.
And that's what she said all the time. And it was cool because me and my brother was like, yeah, all right, we're going to pay it. But then when the reality hit and we like, okay, I want to pay this bill, but I don't have a job, or I went to high school or college, excuse me, and I got inundated with all of these credit cards that put me in debt coming in the door. So all I'm getting at, folks, is that the reason why we talk about this today and why we sharing this information is because we want you to have the proactive approach. But more important than the proactive approach, where is the consultant or the coaching that you perhaps would need to make sure that this ride is a little bit more enjoyable as opposed to you going at it alone? So Lisa, thank you again for coming. Is there anything that you want to leave them with, how they can contact you or what the system or the process is and how to get started?
Sure. Well, basically, when you come to CBI, our goal is to customize an approach for you. So every client that comes in, whether it's physically or by phone, we do a credit assessment. So we look at their credit reports. We are able to answer specific questions about what's going on with them, what we feel needs to happen to get the scores where they need to be to accomplish whatever that particular goal is. And so that's a question for us in every assessment is, what is your goal? Because we have to know where at the end of the day you need to end up to feel successful. And so what we do is craft a plan to help you get there. And so that assessment is the starting point. The assessment costs $75, and if you get the assessment and decide to go with our services, you don't lose the $75. It gets credited towards the package that you decide to purchase. So you can give us a call at 312-376-4580, and when you call us there, just tell us you're calling because you want a credit assessment, and we'll get a sales rep to get on the phone and get your information if you're doing it by phone. And if you're coming in, we'll schedule your appointment. And that way we can sit down and one-on-one go over what's going on with your credit. And if there was some mystery, some things you didn't know how to interpret, you will definitely get answers by doing that assessment. So it is certainly not a waste of time. And it's a very good starting place to understand what you need to do to take yourself to another level.
Well, I would like to end with my testimony of when I went through the process. And just as you were speaking about it, I was reenacting when I came to you guys for the first time. And I paid the $75 with reluctantly, because I mean, let's be real. I had went to several people prior to coming to you guys, and I had got. All right,
which happens a lot.
I'm not ashamed.
That's
to
another
say.
show, Kavan. We're going to talk about how you know the difference.
Got at least twice, and these were people that I had. That one was my friend and one was not. Mm-hmm. Here's my point, is that when I paid that $75 and then I got the information, when I walked out your office on 71st, I felt so empowered. And the empowerment was, I didn't think I was going to be a victim based off my ignorance.
Okay.
That was one thing. The second thing is that I had assistance now.
Yeah.
I had a person, a place, a thing, a company, a face.
Answers. You had answers. See, the thing is, I'm going to tell you, Kavan, that a lot of people realize, and I hope that you'll realize that too, even just from listening to me. We know what we're talking about. This is what we do. We've done it for 15,000 people. So it's a little bit easier when you can get around somebody and you can be like, I've always had that question. Why is this? And then I answer it. And people are like, damn, somebody knows some answers. Thank you. Because a lot of times you're exposed to so many people that, they want to tell you what you should do, but don't have no answers really to nothing. They just, they just want to sound like they know a little something. And, the truth of the matter, when people come to us, the way that we can craft a plan for them, they know we know what we're talking about, and we've successfully done it for a lot of other folks. So I thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people get got by people that don't have a clue half the things I've told you about today. So,
and that first consultation and every other consultation after that, I felt the same way. So that's the point I'm making, folks, is that we talking about and sharing this information because more importantly, to educate you, but the more importantly than that is to give you a company, an entity, a face in our neighborhoods, in our community that has proven track records That's what we want. We want proven track records. That way they have data, they went through certain trials and tribulations that we don't want to go through as an individual. So we want to learn from the education and the information that CBI Solutions has actually provided for us. So once again, this was the credit scoring cheat sheet edition. And yeah, once again, Lisa, you wanted to share how they can actually contact you and perhaps follow you on Facebook when time comes.
One more again, right?
Yeah.
Again, the telephone number is 312-376-4580. And if you want to just reach out to us to let us know that you want a credit assessment, you can fill out a basic form of information, no private information required, at webuildyourcredit.com. webuildyourcredit.com, and then that way you can let us know that you do want a credit assessment, and that's also a way to reach out to us where one of us would know to follow up with you to get that scheduled.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you, Gavin.
All right. So please like, subscribe, share, and look us up. Please, this information is for you guys, and we want you to be able to utilize it to get from point A to point B. So, Fresh Aire Network Podcast Studio, Lisa, Gavin, CBI Solutions. Thank you. And share it. I like it.